Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a truly special online event today. It's called What is the Long Story of Your Soul? Remember your gifts and passions across lifetimes to awaken the intelligence of who you've always been. My name is Stephen Dine. I'm the founder and CEO of the Shift Network, and I have always been fascinated by past lives and the glimpses of those and the longer story. So I'm really excited today to be learning alongside with you from a remarkable teacher and author and co-founder of the Way of the Rose. Her name is Perdita Finn, and she is a rare soul who is both deeply grounded in this lifetime, but able to see the wide angle lens of our soul's journey over time and understand the story and how to work with the story of that in a way that is ultimately transformational, healing, and liberating. So Perdita has taught a number of programs for Shift. They're always beloved, and she's going to be teaching a brand new course for us called The Long Story of Your Soul that we'll share more about towards the end of the hour. So with that said, Perdita, welcome back.
Thanks so much for having me here. I love Shift and I love being with you all. And this feels like, this feels like my favorite course to teach. I'm really excited to have arrived at this moment and to be able to talk about this with you. It is
Yeah.
my favorite topic.
Well, we've talked a lot about ancestors, a lot about
Uh,
communicating with the people on the other side. So this really steps back even further, like our journey in and out of incarnation over many lifetimes. So I'd love for you to start with a little bit of like how you started to discover the long story of your own soul, which I think is a very good precursor to what we're going to share today.
well, I think we all have these intimations of immortality, to quote Wordsworth, right? We all have this sense that we've been here before. How many people are, I'm sure you've had this experience, you arrive somewhere in a land you've never been, a place you've never been, that's somehow weirdly familiar to you
Hmm. Totally.
in ways you can't figure out. Or you meet someone, a stranger, for the very first time, and you look at them and you go, don't I know you? Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we're always having these experiences, and I call them these days the paper folds of our souls, where lifetimes are bleeding into each other
Hmm.
and experiences are bleeding into each other. One of the great gifts I was given, Stephen, was that when I was 30 years old, I met my husband, and we met in a place that might have been a time traveling portal out of Doctor Who. It was a Viennese cafe stuck in front of a cathedral in New York City. And you'd walk through the doors of this place, and you might have been in 19th century Vienna. You might have been in a coffee house in Paris in the 18th century. You could have been anywhere, right? And there could have been, intellectuals plotting revolution at any moment. And I met my husband there. And the experience we both had when we met each other was so the same. And it took us a while to talk about it, but it was as if we were picking up a conversation we'd been having for lifetimes.
Hmm.
And he was the first person who ever validated for me that sense of we've all been here before, many times before. I've known you before. We have known each other before. And it was very interesting for both of us to be able to talk about that reality about our relationship from the get-go. He was at that time the senior editor of Tricycle Magazine, the Buddhist Review. So he brought a Buddhist folk perspective to it. That there is still in Buddhism an experience of reincarnation. Although a lot of modern Buddhists have sort of let that go as a reality in their day-to-day experience, it's really quite foundational.
Hmm.
I had been fascinated by early Christian experiences of reincarnation, particularly some people may know the Cathars. They were a group that emerged in the 12th and 13th century in Europe, and they were eliminated by the Catholic Church. A genocide was committed against them. Such a successful genocide that Hitler would study it, so could figure out how to be successful. Um, but what did the Cathars believe that was so dangerous? They believed in reincarnation. They believed that everybody comes back. And because they believed in reincarnation, they believed that men and women were equal in the 12th and 13th century. They believed that you shouldn't maybe eat animals too much because we've been animals and we will be animals again. And they said, we are against the death penalty and violence because this person we're killing might once have been our mother or once have been our child. So it was a really radical group, right? Really.
And you also
Now,
get a sense for why it's so valuable to believe in reincarnation as well.
yes, exactly. But it undermined the church in a lot of ways, right? Like, and so they became very dangerous, the idea that we're all equal, the idea that a child might be more your elder than the Pope,
Hmm.
right? That this person might be, and what if Jesus is always being reborn and Mary Magdalene's always being reborn? Suddenly it undermines your authority in ways you can't predict. So it's a very powerful idea. But one of the most beautiful articulations of reincarnation is in indigenous cultures around the world, where it's ubiquitous. Tyson Yunkaporta, who's a wonderful Aboriginal teacher from Australia, has said that in his language, the word for great grandmother is the same as the word for child. We're all just recycling. We're all just coming
That's
back.
remarkable.
Isn't that fantastic? It's really like, who are our elders? Our children are our elders. And I have had two friends who recently had babies. So I've had the great pleasure of holding newborns in my arms in the past month. And both of these little boys, they're both little boys. They both look like 85-year-old men, right? Like, you look at their faces and you go like, what do you remember? What do you know? Where have you been? What are you thinking? And so for me, when I had my own children, my husband and I had children pretty quickly. We looked at our babies and asked the same question. And our kids told us again and again and again. And what we began to find is that other children told us too, because we were open to listening.
Hmm.
And so
No, I
this
was just
was
thinking of my daughter. She forgets it now, but when she was maybe 4, she would say, "Do you remember when we had a farm together?" And she'd start talking about it, and
right, right. Like, okay, I mean, and here's the interesting thing, if you're paying attention to it, and I'll talk more about this, when I teach my course, but like my daughter had at age 5 an inordinate fear of rabies. Like rabies is a pretty hard thing to have happen to you, right? But she was terrified of it. And at one point she said, I had rabies.
Hmm.
And then my husband used to joke that he used to think that my daughter had been a raccoon in the monastery where he'd been the head monk. And he thought, maybe she was, and maybe she did have rabies. And I say that with a laugh and a joke, but she is very deeply committed to helping animals in
Hmm.
ways that are profound as a grown-up person. Do you know what I mean? And I think and my son, I was talking to you earlier about him being a farmer. He says that food security is the most important thing in the whole world. He said that since he was 8 years old. There is there are lifetimes where he remembers starvation, right? He's seen it. And it fuels his passions, it fuels his fears, and it also fuels his possibilities. So we can, for ourselves, begin to tap into who we've been and how that can help us become who we want to be.
Mm. What have been some of the key animating themes of your lifetime that you think have really part of a kind of a deeper root system in other lifetimes?
Oh, well, can we go with the Cathars? Can we go back to the Cathars?
Well, it
So
sounded like there was something personal in there.
it's really, and a lot of people think they have Catholic lifestyle. I think it meant that I was like a nameless peasant, okay, in France. But here's the thing: when I was 19 years old, I got a Eurail pass to go hitchhiking with a girlfriend through Europe. Cute boys and wine and good food, right? Like, the plan. And I heard about a medieval village in France that you could go to and live in. And I spent a week convincing her that we had to go. And it was north of Montpellier, and you had to go take a train, a bus, another bus, and then hike into the mountains to get to this village. And she was very irritable about this. But she finally I wore her down and we went. And we walked into the mountains, and it was as if we were leaving time behind, and came to this medieval village where a group of artists were rebuilding it and relearning the techniques that had gone into making it and relearning medieval crafts and making nettle wine and all of a sudden my friend said, this kind of looks like a cool scene. This was a good idea, Perdita. And I got had a panic attack, the first panic attack of my life. And my skin was prickling. I was terrified. I had a cold sweat. I thought, I'm going to die. I'm 19. I'm going to have a heart attack and die. And I said, let's get out of here. I don't like this place. And she looked at me like, oh, come on. We just been, days getting here. I'm not leaving. And I stayed up all night and I couldn't sleep. And I thought, I'm going to die here. And in the morning, I said, I have to leave. And she said, I'm not leaving. I'm staying with you. The boys are cute. We're sticking around. And I said, I'm going. And I left and I ran down that mountain. And it ended my friendship with this woman. She never spoke to me again. And I fled. And I'd never done anything like this in my life, Stephen. And I didn't know what was going on. And I was shaking so hard I couldn't eat, I couldn't think. I got on the bus. I didn't smoke cigarettes, but I bought a pack of cigarettes and began smoking them because I kind of was out of my body. I had to remember that I had a body. It's like I was having like almost like a PTSD experience,
Hmm.
right? And I got finally on the train back to Paris. And this man came in, and in those days there were compartments in the train. And he sat down in my compartment. He was a much older man, very distinctive looking, wearing all tweed, very kind of looked like a professor. And he sat down and he offered me in French a mint. And I think he offered me a mint because I'd been smoking cigarettes all day and I must have smelled awful. And I said, thank you in English. And he said, oh, you're American. He said, what are you doing in Catholic country? And I said, what's that? And he said, it's where you are. Why are you here? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And he changed the subject. He said, would you like a cup of coffee? And I kept a notebook, a journal, and I wrote Catholic country and I circled it. And he came back and he changed the subject and he was very nice and he talked to me, never brought it up again. And when we finally went to say goodbye to each other after this long train ride, he said, one day you will know why you are in Catholic country.
Hmm.
And I never looked into it. It was as if I circled that word and I didn't want to investigate it. And when I finally did, after I met my husband, I realized that the medieval village we'd been in was 10 miles from a place called Béziers, where on July 22nd, Mary Magdalene's feast day, the Catholic Church came in and killed everyone.
Hmm.
And those people who fled into the mountains were hunted down and murdered.
Ugh.
And suddenly I knew I'd been one of those people who had fled into the mountains and been hunted down and murdered. I'd been a nameless peasant in the 12th century. And the reality of it really entered my body. And my whole life, I realized I'd had dreams of running away and not being able to run away. And, I did psychoanalysis in my 20s, Stephen, trying to get to the heart of these dreams of why do I have dreams where I'm running from people and hiding in ditches? And, we analyzed it in terms of my parents' marriage and my fears, and it never scratched me where I itched. But here's the crazy thing. I wrote a book where I told that story. And I began to realize one day I picked up the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail that some people may know about Mary
Hmm.
Magdalene. And it's written by Henry Lincoln. And Henry Lincoln was the man I met on the train so many
Oh,
years ago.
that's amazing.
I
That's
know,
an amazing twist to the story there.
And the really beautiful thing that he did, the gift he gave me, Stephen, was that he didn't say, you were a Catholic. I know you were a Catholic girl. He
Right.
said, you know what? You might want to think about why you were called to Catholic country and terrified by Catholic country.
Hmm. Yeah.
And and he and I've learned that that was a really beautiful invitation. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And it's that I meet people now who I say, so interesting, that you had your experience in Jerusalem. This that was so profound. Someday you might
Yeah.
want to look into that, think
Well,
of.
that's a super compelling and very powerful story, and you're a great storyteller. So let's talk a little bit about how. So for people who resonate with this, which I'm sure almost everybody does, that we all have glimpses, intuitions. Probably a majority people, I would guess, already believe in past lives. How do you find you start to get into that deeper story? So not just little glimpses, little piecemeal synchronicities or deja vus, but like start to understand the larger animating story.
Well, one of the things that I'm really interested in is I talk about the long story of our souls instead of reincarnation. I
Mm,
mean, in a certain sense, it's just a synonym for reincarnation, right? But one of the things I think it's important to remember is not only we don't just have one or two or three lives behind us. If we know that the first law of the conservation of matter and energy is nothing goes anywhere, then we've all been here since the beginning of life on Earth. We have 10,000 times 10,000 lifetimes on this planet. We have lifetimes as men and women. We have lifetimes as animals. We have lifetimes as plants. We have lifetimes as species that have gone extinct. We have lifetimes as hominids we don't even know existed yet. We have so many different lifetimes within us. But every one of those lifetimes can bring us trouble if we don't know how to work with it, and can bring us treasures if we do.
mm,
And so, one of the things that I like to do is it's not like we're ever going to go, we're going to get a map. We're not going to get a DNA map of all our past lives. I often say that this information is on a need to know basis. We get what we need at any particular moment. And we're always getting information about past lives every day, all the time, from our dreams, from our encounters with people, from our imagination, from the world at large, and most of all, from the dead themselves, who help us remember who we really are. So there are a lot of different methods for tapping into that information. And then there are, and that's one of the things I like to do with people. I don't want to just be like, I was a Catholic. Well, a Catholic was one of my lives. Maybe I lived, 25 years in the 12th century for 15 minutes. But, hominids have been around for a million years. That's a lot of lifetimes. And we haven't just been human beings. Like my daughter, we've been raccoons, we've been seals. My son's convinced he and I were seals together for many lives. I think he's right. And but what happens when we begin to tap into the resources of those other lives? And we have lives with trauma. I think that Catholic life had trauma in it.
hmm
But I also have lifetimes without trauma.
Yeah, so how important do you find is to kind of focus on what are some of the things that really are kind of unexpectedly traumatic, or you said your daughter's a fear of rabies, or you're kind of freaking out in a Cathar village. It's like, what are the signals that there could be something that's still tangled up and that's still following you through time?
Well, there's a story I love, and it's about a man who finds himself stuck in a town he hates with people he despises and a day he doesn't want to ever relive again, reliving it over and over and over. And every day when he wakes up to that day, the first thing that happens to him is he takes a step outside and steps knee deep into a pothole and ice water up to his thigh. And it's like every day this happens, and he does not know how to escape this experience. And I think all of us have those potholes in our lives. Like we know what they are. We can feel them, right? I've been stepping in this pothole for a long time. I don't want to be in this pothole anymore. I, my husband, I think, spent too many lifetimes as a monastic. You know what I mean? And he's really he's not just trying to recover from a few years as a Buddhist monk in this life. He's trying to recover from 30 lifetimes of being a monastic. It's really hard for him to recover from. We have problems that we've carried with us. And one of the things I love about this story about this man is the first step to not stepping in the pothole is realizing there's a pothole. We've been stepping in again and again and again. Sometimes we're in such a hurry that we don't stop to notice some of those potholes in our lives. And I think when we start to talk about them, we can feel like, oh, I have you know, psychology would tell us, oh, it originated in my childhood or my upbringing or some of my experiences when I was a young person. But some of those potholes are older feelings of persecution, feelings of betrayal, feelings of loneliness we may have carried not just from one lifetime, but for many lifetimes.
Hmm. So once you sort of intuit, you found your pothole, the mud puddle that you keep stepping into, how do you trace it back into other lifetimes?
Well, we can try a little experiential if you'd like. Would you like to do that?
Sure, let's
A
do it.
quick game. I know there are a lot of ways to do this. Okay, there's so many ways, but this is one I found that's really fun. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions, okay?
Okay.
I don't want you to think about the answers too much. All right? We'll
This is
just
just
relax.
me or everyone's doing this?
Everyone's doing this, and we're going to play and be silly. All right? We this you are not committed to your answer. You know what I mean? You can change it in 5 minutes. So we just have fun. What animal do you remember being today? What animal do you remember being today?
Lion is the first thing that came up.
Okay, a lion. I'm a bear. Okay, today I'm remembering my bear lives. So today it's a lion. What creature of the sea do you remember being today?
Whale.
Oh, I remember being an otter. If you were a tree, what tree would you have been?
Oak.
Oak, hemlock for me. If you were a stone, where would I find you?
Yosemite.
Oh, I find me on a mossy stream up in the mountains, high up in the mountains
Hmm.
here, in a shallow stream, but Yosemite for you. Okay, so we're going to hold on to oak and lion and whale and Yosemite. And I'm holding on to bear and otter and hemlock and that pebble in a stream. Now I'm going to tell you about one of my ruts, my potholes. Everybody think about your pothole. You don't have to tell us your pothole if you don't. I'll share mine. One of my potholes is getting too mad too fast, particularly with my children, particularly with my son. He and I are very alike. And I can just, he'll say something and I just get like a bear up on my hind legs. You know what I mean? I just, I got to be big and too tough with him. And he then becomes a bear and gets up on his hind legs. And that's one of our potholes. That's one of our ruts. And one of the things is realizing that rut is just an echo of my bear life.
Hmm.
It's just an echo of my bear life. But sometimes, what if I chose a different animal to be in that moment? What if instead of being in a bear in that moment and getting stuck in that bear-like anger and stubbornness, I decided to be an otter and get playful and silly. Now, this happened to me, Stephen, 3 days ago. I, my son said something, I don't know, I don't know why it irritated me. I don't even remember. And I started to get my bear self, and I saw him start to get his bear self. This is such a rut with the two of us. And then I switched and decided to be my otter self. I could have chosen to be a stone with the water coming over me and being very still. I could have chosen to be the hemlock he used to climb outside of our door. But I decided to go otter, otter. And within a minute, I was laughing and he was laughing. And we were giggling. And that's why I don't even remember what we were fighting about. And I say this because, and I want everyone listening to think about this. Think about that pothole you're stepping into, that rut, that problem, and wonder, it may come from a lifetime, like my daughter's fear of rabies. Raccoons they need to be frightened of rabies, right? Rabies is a really big problem in the Northeast for raccoons. It's not such a big problem for human beings. But when she starts to feel that fear coming, what other animal selves? Well, maybe she needs to tap into her opossum selves because opossums can't catch rabies, or her bird self because birds can't catch rabies. To remember there are other selves within her. Every one of us can do this. Maybe if we remember we're a bird, we can fly over that pothole. Maybe if we remember we're a heron, we can just step over it. Maybe if we remember we hold all these other lives within us, that they're not character deficiencies. They're just habits and ways of being. And we have other habits that we can call on that we may have forgotten to use. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense. So it's sort of almost like you're just by expanding your sense of the characters in your palette, you can choose more rather than just operate out of autopilot.
Well, interestingly, in yoga, we take the shapes of animals, right? I'm convinced that the asanas in yoga were meant to remind us of our animal selves,
Hmm.
to call,
So they were designed to take us out of the human identification. Interesting.
right? And even what's really interesting to me, I'm fascinated by medieval feast days. Barbara Ehrenreich has written a lot about them. And in medieval feast days, people would change shapes. They would wear masks. You might wear an animal mask. You might decide to wear a lion mask today, or you might decide to become the green man and become a tree. Or men would become women and women would become men. Kings would dress as peasants, peasants would dress as kings. And there were many of these feast days throughout the year where people would tap into their other selves. They might come as animals, they might come as birds, dragons, mythical creatures that we were calling forth. Masks used to be a way in many cultures of remembering that we've had other faces, other bodies, and they're still there within us with the resources and
Hmm.
gifts to bring to us.
So it kind of speaks to the importance of not being kind of too grooved into a singular story, it sounds like.
Exactly. Exactly. Like sometimes people ask me to introduce myself when I do a lot of podcasts, right? And I'm always like, well, who are you? What are you? And I go, well, I'm an animal trying to be a good animal today, but I've been a tree and I know I know I've been a rock somewhere and I know,
And the podcasters are like, where do I go with that?
I know they tend to like it. It's so fun. It's fun not to be so stuck inside our identity, right? Like we
Uh,
get to be other things. Like it's fun to play at other things. My town shuts down for Halloween every year. The whole town shuts down. And everyone gets dressed up, grown-ups, children, people without kids, with kids, whatever. And it's the most fun day of the whole year, right? Halloween. Halloween is an echo of these feast days where everyone would become someone else.
hmm
Because that in becoming someone else, we remember who we are.
hmm Beautiful. Well, let's talk a little bit about that moment of like by becoming somebody else, like how, when that choice point where you all of a sudden become the otter, like how, like, what are some of your recommendations of how to sort of like claim that choice point so that you're not just grooved into this old story?
Well, we can do it through our dreams. We can do it through our imagination. Daydreaming is a lost art, and that is a skill I am trying to cultivate in people is the lost art of reverie and daydreaming and our fanciful ideas, letting our minds just wander and play. Imagination is what we often call reverie. You know, can I give you proof that I was an otter, Stephen? I cannot. But can we treat this very, very lightly? We're also called to certain periods. Um, Historical fiction writers, I often find, why do they write about one period instead of another period? Why are we called to go to certain places and we don't know why, right? There are countries we're called to. I found I would not go to Spain. I've been to Europe many times. I wouldn't go to Spain. And I kept thinking, why won't I go to Spain? Why won't I go to Spain? And I don't want to go there. It's like verboten in my being. And one night, Stephen, I had a dream where I had a child, and in the dream, they want to baptize the child, and I'm trying to figure out a way to protect this child from being baptized. And I woke up and I said, what's that dream about? To my husband. It's always helpful to have someone to chat with. And he said, sounds like you were a converso in Spain. They were the Jews who were forced to convert and to convert their children.
Hmm.
I said, oh, and the Inquisition was developed to persecute them. I
Well,
said, got it. Now I know why I don't want to go to Spain. And then here's the funny thing that happens. Once you claim that memory, once you work with it, I'd like to go to Spain now. I kind of be curious about going there. I don't feel scared of it anymore, just like I don't feel scared of that Catholic life anymore.
hmm,
Because now I understand it's in the past, not my present.
hmm. I want to ask you next a little bit more about some of the pitfalls of the long story. So we're talking about how to step out of it and maybe some of the pitfalls of the long story of your soul.
Well, the pitfalls are that we think we know who we are, right?
Hmm.
The pitfalls are that we think that we only have one life to get it right. What if we had all of eternity to work with? And so in the story that I talk about, the man who's stepping in the pothole day after day after day on this crummiest day of his life. This is actually the plot of Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, right?
Yep.
He's the weatherman and he's stuck there and he hates it and he hates everybody he's with. And he keeps saying, why aren't I reliving a good day? Why am I living the crummiest day of my life? Why am I stuck in this horrible day? And he thinks, for eternity, I have to relive this day. This is horrible. And in the beginning, he's so angry, he feels like a victim and he's enraged and he's victimized. And then he decides, well, if it does, nothing matters. I'm going to eat whatever I want. I'm going to drink whatever I want. I'm going to steal. I'm going to be bad. I can be as bad as I want. And then he gets bored with being bad. And he thinks, I guess I'm a god. So then he says, if I'm a god, I can do whatever I want. And he goes off and tries to be a god and win the love of everyone. And he gets bored of being a god. And then he says, I'm going to be good. I guess I better just be good. And he thinks he's going to be good so that it's going to get him out of this crummy day. Like, I'll be good and I'll get out of this crummy day. And it doesn't work. And he gets bored of being good. So then he becomes suicidal. He reaches his existential crisis. This is the danger of the long story, right? There's a beautiful book that just got written about a woman who lives forever. And she goes through it's called The Fountain, and these same process of permissiveness, power, victimization, rage, bargaining, and finally despair. But then even despair doesn't work because every time he kills himself, he wakes up in the same day again. He can't get out. But then one morning, Stephen, every morning he's woken up in this horrible bed and breakfast, and he's come downstairs, had this horrible cup of coffee, and stepped outside and stepped in the mud puddle. And he's passed this woman he has paid no attention to. And one day he passes her and follows her and discovers she's the piano teacher in town. And he says to himself, if I'm stuck in eternity, if I'm stuck here forever, I might as well take a piano lesson. And he takes one piano lesson. He sucks. And he takes a second piano lesson and he sucks. And 10,000 piano lessons later, we see him again. And he's a virtuoso. He's a jazz genius. And he's playing music. And this man, this grumpy, horrible man, is suddenly brimming with joy and ecstasy. And the thing about that joy, when he's playing his music, everyone loves him and he loves everyone else. And he does perform acts of goodness and he has won friends and he is beloved and he wins the love of his life. But it all comes from deciding that if I'm stuck in eternity forever, what's the one thing I can do that will change my fate? And so for each of us, the question I would say to avoid the pitfalls of the long story, what is your piano lesson?
Hmm.
My grandmother, my grandmother who had 6 kids and 36 grandchildren through the Depression, laundry forever, in her mid 80s, Stephen, took an oil painting class at the local library. How were her paintings? Meh. But when I think of my grandmother, I have one of her oil paintings above my desk. I think when she arrived in her next life, she'd taken that first painting class.
Hmm.
She was ready to go. If you had all the time in the world, what would you do today?
Hmm.
If it could make a difference 49 lifetimes from now.
It's a great question. Well, really gives you a different perspective on eternity then, doesn't it?
Yeah. You don't have to be in despair if you have, I mean, when we're confronted by the enormity of eternity, we can feel despair, right? Terror. But it also means, eh, we always have another chance to get it right.
Yeah, and Groundhog Day is a great metaphor for everything you're talking about. I love that movie. It's one of my favorite movies, and
Is it one of your favorite movies?
it is honestly, yeah, yeah. I've seen it
It's a
4 or 5
religion in our
times.
family. You know what we sometimes, Stephen, you know what we sometimes say when we meet people is, I think they're only on the fourth day of Groundhog Day.
That's really funny. That is really funny. Yeah, so let's talk. So, what are some of the other things that you really holding this long story view of the soul? So, you've kind of got a deeper perspective on eternity and how to sort of make best use of our time. What are some of the other things that you really find are helpful to sort of shift out of the worries of the moment into that wider perspective?
One of the things I like to think about is we begin to think about what our piano lesson is. What is that one thing that if I did it would bring me so much joy that it would become transformative? And sometimes, one of the things when I go back and I would go back to the experiential, which is asking us about those animals, what are you today?
Mm-hmm.
I look at my animals. I had an owl, I have bears, I have otters, I have hickory things. And I don't have any birds. I am really suck at flying and singing. I want some bird lifetimes in there. I, I would like, if I get to pray about something, I want to pray for a few lifetimes as birds that sing. And now it may take me a while. I may have to go from crow and blue jay before I can become a nightingale. But I'd like to move up the ladder with my bird lives. So I sometimes think of Mozart. Mozart, when he was 4 years old, wrote his first concerto. 4. So, what I wonder is, what were the lifetimes that came before? How many lifetimes did Mozart spend as a bird?
Mm.
How many piano lessons was he the worst student at in lifetimes before he got there? Right? Were there lifetimes, and here's hard stuff, where he was silenced? Because you know what I mean? Sometimes, and what about failure as a teacher? What if we have lives of abject failure? Does that mean those lives have been meaningless? Or do they mean that we may have learned something really powerful that we take with us into our next lifetime?
Mm-hmm.
Because no life is a failure. No life. My sister got
Even if you're
what?
carrying the story that it was a failure, there actually wasn't actually a failure. I think that's a beautiful perspective.
Well, I mean, think about how much we learn from failure. The playwright Samuel Beckett once said, fail, fail again, fail better. That was his only teaching. He said he had to offer on writing. And anyone who's done anything of courage or artistic, power knows that you have to be risk failure. And what if we had lifetimes where we risked failure and did fail?
Hmm.
Maybe we do.
Yeah, which it's the opposite. So often we're trying to like avoid a situation that was parallel, we died or failed or whatever it was. But you're really saying like see the deeper blessing in those lifetimes as well.
Yeah, and that there could be deep blessings, and we may not. One of the things, I will talk about prayer in this class because we come into this life with prayers. We've been praying for lifetimes. What were your prayers as a lion? What is a lion praying for? Well, the lion may have great big prayers about the earth and the state of the earth, right? I
Mm,
mean, the lions are really seeing, the lions have been human companions for a long time, way, way back. And I'm sure the lions have great, deep teachings they want to remember and bring through. What are
hmm
the prayers of the lion within you?
Yeah,
What,
well, I think the lions basically kind of ruled the earth for far longer than humans and
you
did
bet.
so in a way that was harmonious with the ecosystem.
I don't know if you've ever heard about the white lions of
Oh
Timvadi.
yeah, I was actually
Oh,
going to visit them a couple months ago, but it didn't work out. But
Stephen, you're so interesting. But Linda Tucker's beautiful book about the white lions when she meets the lion shaman, and people lived symbiotically with lions. The lions would hunt and we would scavenge with them, and we had these beautiful relationships with them that we've lost. And we need to summon our lion memories, right? To learn how to live with our ecosystems again.
hmm Yeah, I think that's so much at the heart of what Linda's really offering there too, is like a model for how we can
Oh.
have a harmonious relationship with Mother Earth.
And I think Linda's one of these people who clearly had been a lion shaman, right? Like, I mean, she had that awakening experience. I mean, she was really, I reading her book, I mean, she was bringing through so much wisdom in that book.
Mm,
But so
beautiful.
we call on these selves and they guide us and they bring us prayer. But what prayers are we going to take with us when we die? Sometimes people say to me, "How do I get ready for death?" Because I work with the dead a lot. And I say the way you get ready for death is knowing what you want in your next life. What are you praying for your next life?
Mm. A beautiful perspective. You really identify with our soul at that point. So you're just not trying to accumulate things for our local personality self, but really, what are the deeper lessons?
When someone holds, I'm sure when someone holds little Stephen in your next life, they're going to look in your face and go, "Oh my gosh, this kid knows a lot." But what you want is you want parents who want to know what your prayer is that you're bringing through.
Mm, that's beautiful. Well, Perdita, it's just a joy to be with you and you're such a master storyteller and help to illuminate these deeper shifts that really help us liberate ourselves from a kind of a fixed or repetitive pattern that doesn't serve. So let's talk about your upcoming course, since it's a really
Sure.
unique way to restory our literal soul's journey. So the course that Perdita is offering is called The Long Story of Your Soul. Heal across lifetimes and awaken the wisdom and gifts within the unfinished stories of your many lives. You can find it at the URL longstoryofyoursoul.com, longstoryofyoursoul.com. It's a 7-week program, and Perdita, I'd love for you to just share some of your intentions for what people will come away with, and let's give a tour of the modules.
Absolutely. In the first module, we'll be looking at how do we tap into the multiplicities of our long story? What are some methodologies for doing that? We'll be looking at dreams, reverie, daydreams, encounters, oracles, and how we can begin to integrate that into our day-to-day experience of who we are.
Hmm. So that's module one. Then we go into module two, summoning the old ones, reconnect with your ancestors and deepen your sense of belonging.
So, one of the things we forget about our past selves is they were not individual, alone selves. They were selves with parents, grandparents, brothers and sisters, friends, lovers, neighbors. And all of those souls are our ancestors that we can call upon, not just our ancestors from this life, but our ancestors from other lives can become powerful resources in accomplishing what we want to accomplish right now.
Module three, desire is your guiding star. Reclaim what you truly want and let it guide your life.
When we know what we want, when we know what that piano lesson is, We have our Polaris. We have that star in the sky that can guide us through the darkness, the swamplands, the hellholes, anything. But how do we find our star? How do we find the star that we want to follow? We're going to be doing some labyrinth work in this course. We're going to be talking about how do we get to a prayer that we can carry for lifetimes.
Module 4, karmic complications and opportunities. Turn setbacks into insight and new possibilities.
So this is the hardest question of all. When something awful happens, we begin to ask, how is this the answer to my prayers? What prayers? How did I possibly order this off the menu? And this will be a looking at the tough stuff that can happen in the labyrinth of the soul. Why do we find ourselves in tough situations? And what do we do when we find ourselves there?
Hmm. Module 5, receiving the blessings and wisdom of your ancestors. Trust your intuition and receive clear guidance.
All of those ancestors from all of those lives, our tree ancestors, our animal ancestors, even our stone ancestors, are speaking to us. How do we listen? How do we hear their messages? How do we understand them? How do we let the whole earth become our oracle deck?
Module 6, intimations of immortality. Expand your imagination and experience time in a new way.
This will be a fun trip into time travel. I'm a big, big interest in time travel. How can we time travel simply by changing our minds and by exploring the world within us? What if all time is happening right now, as the physicists say it is? What does it mean then if we can drop into different time periods, different experiences of time right where we are? We'll look at precognitive dreams. We're going to look at changing the past to change the future. And we'll be doing a fun dive into a lot of time travel literature.
Going down some deep metaphysical rabbit holes in that one. So that's good.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm somebody who spent years in psychoanalysis trying to make sense of my precognitive dreams, and then I met Robert Moss, and my life fell into place.
Then finally, module 7, reborn into belonging. Clarify the life you're moving toward and the world you'll return to.
What are your prayers for your next life? What are your prayers for 49 lifetimes from now? What if, like the character Bill Murray plays in Groundhog Day, we said when we looked at the world around us at this earth, let's live here? How would that change this earth, this planet, and where we are?
Hmm. What a beautiful offering this course is. And really, in this moment of a lot of collective tumult, it's so good to take the wide angle view and see this through the lens of many lifetimes and dimensions and timely, different parallel tracks and see how it all weaves together and how we can shift it to the highest possibilities.
Well, Stephen, it's important to remember we have in past lives, there's a meme that says, we're the daughters of the witches you didn't burn. And I always say, well, I am the witch you burned, and I came back. So I've done that before. We've
Great.
we've done war before. We've done genocide. We've done climate change. We know what to do now if we can tap into our wisdom.
Mm, beautiful. Well, again, there's more detail on each of those 7 live modules at longstoryofyoursoul.com. And if you choose to participate, you're going to get those live sessions with Perdita, which also includes time to ask your questions live, engage in practices together. You also get video and audio recordings of every session, as well as word-for-word transcripts. There are weekly exercises and practices for inquiry and learning at home. There's a community to support you and deepen your experiences. And on the page, you also see that Perdita has been very generous with bonuses. There's a previously recorded video teaching from Hadass Knox. This is called Time Traveling. Curious about that.
Oh, Hadass is an extraordinary time traveler. She's a historical fiction writer. And I think our most powerful psychics are hanging out as fiction writers. I know a psychic who says the best psychic is Stephen King, but Hadass is an extraordinary historical fiction writer. And she's written a book about a psychic. And, she's psychic, right? But her psychicism is channeling another time.
Hmm.
How can she's going to tell us how we can begin channeling other time periods.
Very cool. Then there's a second bonus. It's called The Shape-Shifting Soul. This is a PDF excerpt from Perdita's next book. It's probably exciting to get a glimpse behind the curtain there. You want to share more about what you're writing about?
Yeah, that book has come through whole, and I got the whole idea for it on St. Francis's feast day. And I got diagnosed with an allergy to all mammalian products on St. Francis's feast day. It's a wild thing. And my next book is about our animal selves. And it's going to be about how do we recover our animal selves and our animal knowing and our animal guidance. And and I've written a piece about it. You can, if you want the hint, it's about my lifetime as a seal with my son, the piece I've shared.
So you had no allergies, and then one day, just boom.
Boom. It's a tick-borne illness. It bites you, and suddenly you're allergic to all mammal products. And here's the crazy thing: there are mammal products in everything.
Wow, that's wild on St. Francis's birthday.
No coincidences.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's the second bonus. And then there's a
Mhm.
third bonus you get if you choose to move forward today until midnight. We always like to do this as a way to encourage you to read through the page and tune in with your own knowing. And this is a family affair. We have a previously recorded video teaching with Sophie Strand called Becoming the Animate in Everything. You want to share about that?
Yes, this is with my daughter, the author Sophie Strand, and Sophie's going to share and talk about what it was like to grow up in a family where reincarnation and the long story of our souls was a daily conversation. And what does that mean? What's it like to grow up in that family? People are often, my daughter is a very successful author, ecological philosopher, poet, historical fiction writer, she's, just sort of dazzling in what she brings through. But how much came from the kinds of conversations that we've had since she was a baby? She's going to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it is just giving permission because a lot of the kids have
Exactly.
they can tap into it until they're shut down, and then so thanks for giving her permission to be her full self. So
Wild ride, I'll tell you.
what a beautiful offering this whole program is, and that sounds like a great bonus too to learn from Sophie about your whole journey and as a family. So again, the whole program is laid out in detail at longstoryofyoursoul.com. And a few other things about it. We've kept the investment very accessible for you. It's just three payments of $128. So you can save 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $349. The course is going to start July 14th and run Tuesdays at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. But even if you can't make the live times, you can still get the full value with the recordings, the transcripts, and the community. So there's beautiful testimonials, and really Perdita just developed such a loving community around her with each course and each program. So this is not just a place to learn; it's also a sanctuary for friendship, for camaraderie, and for deep transformational growth. So you are going to be in good hands and in a beautiful community. Choose to move forward, and again, it's at longstoryofyoursoul.com. So, Perdita, always a joy to be with you. You're just so much fun. I feel like you. Which lifetime are you on with your Groundhog Day? You're on about lifetime 1,000
It
or
can
something, or
vary at
day
any moment.
1,000.
I don't know. I'm trying to take that piano lesson, here's the thing. Here's my piano lesson. I am the worst singer in the whole world. I'm so tone deaf, and I'm just determined to sing every day no matter what. Mostly have to do it when other people aren't around. I think even my dog looks at me when I sing.
Yeah, so another 100 lifetimes or so in singing. Well, at least the teaching of courses like this, you've got that mastered. So, so it's been joyful to be with you, and everyone who's watching, thank you for coming, and you're warmly welcome to join Perdita in this brand new course. Again, it's all at longstoryofyoursoul.com, and you will get that special bonus of becoming the animate in everything with Sophie Strand if you sign up by midnight tonight. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Perdita, for a beautiful, joyful time together. And anything that's still on your heart you want to say?
I just want to say thank you so much for creating such a beautiful community at the Shift Network, which I just love to be part of. I really feel like what you bring in, you create an oasis of peace and faith in troubled times that really makes a difference in the world. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for being part of it. Well, thank you, and thank you all.